I've been following Marvel's multiverse saga for years now, and every once in a while a new idea hits me so hard that I have to stop everything and dig deeper. And today's theory? Yeah, this one might actually blow open the entire direction of the MCU's future. Because I think Marvel just quietly revealed Doctor Doom's true purpose in the multiverse, and why the upcoming Avengers. Doomsday movie might be hiding a twist bigger than anything we saw in Infinity War or Endgame. What's even crazier is that the key to guessing Doom's destiny isn't from the Kang storyline itself, but from a movie that never actually got made. A missing piece of the original Marvel roadmap that completely reshapes how we understand the Kang dynasty and how it morphed into Avengers Doomsday. So today, I'm going to break down how Kang the Conqueror, the Sacred Timeline, He Who Remains, and Doctor Doom might all be part of one enormous closed-loop plan. One that starts long before Loki Season 1 and ends with the Doom-centric Doomsday teaser arriving this December. And trust me, once you see how tightly these threads connect, you might start thinking the same thing I did. Marvel didn't just change their plan, they upgraded it. Before I jump all the way in, I want to welcome everyone tuning in. This is Hollywood Latest News, and I'm your host, Luke Harrison. Thank you for being here, and if you're new, this is where I dive into theories, breakdowns, and wild but well-researched deep dives that keep Marvel fans fed between trailers. Now let's get into it, because this one has layers. So, Marvel originally announced Avengers, the Kang Dynasty, as a central piece of the multiverse saga, right? But with everything happening behind the scenes, the rewrites, the shifts in direction, the sudden emphasis on Doom, it became obvious that the Kang Dynasty wasn't going to survive in its original form. But what if I told you that the movie wasn't scrapped, it evolved? As in, the Kang Dynasty wasn't canceled, it was absorbed into Avengers, Doomsday. And the reason, at least in my opinion, comes down to one idea. Doom and Kang were always two sides of the same multiversal chessboard. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something huge. Kang's entire purpose in the MCU might not have been to win or conquer. It might have been to stop someone else, someone far more dangerous than even he was. Someone who was never supposed to exist. And if this theory is right, Kang didn't just fight to protect himself, he rewrote the entire timeline to erase Doctor Doom. Now I know that sounds insane, but let me explain why this actually makes a terrifying amount of sense. In Loki, we learn that He Who Remains ended the first multiversal war by pruning every version of Kang that threatened his rule. But what if the original story went deeper? What if Kang discovered that Doom was destined to surpass him, a threat he couldn't outsmart or overpower, so he used the timeline itself as a weapon? I believe Kang effectively rewrote Doom out of existence by altering his origins so drastically that Doom wouldn't become Doom at all. And this is where the wildest part of the theory comes in. The part I wrestled with the most, because I needed it to feel logical, not just flashy. So here's the twist. What if Kang prevented Doom's rise by rewriting Doom's childhood, by replacing him with someone else entirely? Imagine Doom as a child, in his true original timeline, growing up to become the genius, sorcerer, scientist ruler we know. But instead of allowing that future, Kang alters the timeline so that Victor's identity gets overwritten by someone else, someone beloved, someone whose presence in the MCU resets the trajectory so completely that Doom simply never happens. And the theory many fans have tossed around, one that I actually think fits frighteningly well, is that Kang rewrote Victor's life and replaced him with Tony Stark. Now, I'm not saying Tony is Doom, not at all. But imagine if Tony, in the sacred timeline maintained by He Who Remains, was originally born to the family that should have raised Victor. Imagine if Tony's existence itself is the divergence that prevented Doom from taking his true path. Tony becomes one of the timeline's sacred pieces, a pawn that Kang uses to block the rise of his greatest rival. It's poetic, because Tony Stark ends up being the very hero who defeats Thanos, stabilizes the timeline, and unknowingly protects Kang's version of history. Tony's entire life arc essentially keeps the multiverse from birthing Victor Von Doom. But here's the kicker. When Sylvie kills He Who Remains at the end of Loki Season 1, that protection collapses. The timeline no longer has a guardrail. Doom's erased origin now begins to reassert itself, because the sacred timeline isn't sacred anymore. Everything starts unraveling, and the original Victor Von Doom begins pushing his way back into existence. This is where Avengers Doomsday comes in, and why the upcoming teaser, reportedly dropping in December alongside Avatar. Fire Nation is supposedly packed with Doom teases. Marvel isn't just inserting Doom into the MCU, they're presenting him as a force whose existence was prevented, until now. And that brings me to another detail that I couldn't stop thinking about. Because if the MCU version of Doom is based even loosely on his pre-Beyonder Secret Wars incarnation, especially the one from the 1984 run, then Doom's power level won't just be big bad of a movie material. It'll be rewriting reality with his bare hands. Material. Doom in Secret Wars didn't just fight cosmic beings. He stole their power. He outsmarted beings who shouldn't even be comprehensible. So if Marvel's leaning toward that kind of doom, yeah, Kang would absolutely try to get rid of someone like that before they ever got a chance to rise. And this mirrors one of the craziest things about Doom in the comics. No matter how many times he's erased, banished, killed, or rewritten, Doom always finds a path back to his true self. The universe bends to Doom. Fate bends to Doom. And the idea that Doom is returning to the MCU timeline after being suppressed by Kang makes this even more compelling. Now, let's talk about Doom's power source and survival connection, because Marvel also seems to be pulling from newer comics, specifically the 2024 run where Doom faces Galactus and ends up catastrophically injured. That storyline explores how reliant Doom actually is on his armor, not just for protection, but for survival. After Doom's battle with Galactus leaves him nearly dead, Valeria steps in to save him by placing him on a life support system and forging a brand new suit made from a mix of Uru and vibranium. Think about that for a second. Uru, the metal used for Mjolnir. Vibranium, the most important metal in the MCU so far. Combined, that armor isn't just tech, it's a mythological construct disguised as technology. If Doom's MCU armor incorporates a similar concept, then Marvel is giving him a physical form that puts him directly between magic and science, the two forces that define him. But even more importantly, this setup lets Marvel explain Doom's survival across universes, across cosmic threats, across timeline collapses. Doom simply refuses to die, not because he's unkillable, but because someone always pulls him out of the fire. It reinforces this idea that Doom is meant to exist. And that makes Kang's attempt to erase him even more poetic, because now Doom's reappearance becomes inevitable. And speaking of how Doom prepares for big threats, I want to bring up one of my favorite pieces of Doom lore, the panels from Secret Wars issue 10, where Doom spends pages studying patterns of energy signatures from cosmic entities. Not fighting them, studying their weaknesses, their movements, their habits. Doom is the kind of villain who wins not because he's stronger, but because he does homework no one else even thinks about. And this is exactly the version of Doom I think Marvel is setting up. Because, let's be honest, a villain who simply punches hard or has lots of minions isn't what the MCU needs right now. The audience wants an intellectual threat, a planner, someone who thinks 10 moves ahead of even Kang. And Doom is the perfect embodiment of that. He analyzes power, he dissects it, he figures out the logic behind gods, and then he becomes the exception to their rules. If the Doomsday teaser shows Doom doing anything even remotely like this, whether he's studying energy, reading signals, messing with multiversal patterns, then Marvel is telling us straight up, this dude is the final boss. So here's where everything ties together. And this is the idea that made me sit back and go, oh, okay, this actually fits perfectly. If the Kang dynasty was originally meant to focus on Kang's rise and fall, Doomsday might instead focus on the chaos that follows the collapse of Kang's timeline. Meaning Doom isn't introduced as a new villain. He's introduced as something that was already meant to exist but wasn't allowed to. Someone the timeline itself had to suppress because even the conqueror of time feared him. Someone who returns not because he wants to, but because the timeline finally breaks enough that it can't hold him back. Doom isn't a plot twist. Doom is a correction. And that, to me, is what makes Avengers. Doomsday is such a brilliant direction for the MCU. Instead of playing cleanup with Kang, Marvel is allowing the multiverse to snap back to its true state. And Doom is the result. If Marvel plays this right, Doom might not even be the villain of just one movie. He could be the overarching force of the entire multiverse saga. And honestly, he should be. He's that big. He's that dangerous. And he's that important to Marvel history. So yeah, if the teaser drops in December and really leans into Doom's legend, I won't be surprised at all. I think Marvel has been building toward this shift since Loki Season 1, and we're finally reaching the moment where Doom rises to fill the vacuum Kang left behind. And that's why the missing pieces of the original Kang Dynasty plan matter. Because they didn't disappear. Marvel just upgraded the threat. If you made it this far, thank you so much for hanging out with me and exploring this theory. I always appreciate you spending time here and supporting the deep dives. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please hit that like button, share the video with someone who loves Marvel theories, and subscribe for more content here on Hollywood Latest News. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to directly support my work, consider dropping a super thanks. Anything up to $20 truly helps me keep creating more breakdowns like this. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.